Welcome back to Between the Verses with us, Josh and Maya.
Here, we like to talk about faith, the Bible, and how they intersect with everyday life. And it's really good to be here with you again. So, if you've been following along, by this point in the series, you'll know we've spent a lot of time sitting with questions that don't have quick answers. Faith when it's hard, doubt when it lingers, wisdom when the moment has already passed.
And now we're picking up another one of those questions. One that sounds inspiring on the surface, but can feel surprisingly confusing once you start living with it.
We're talking about calling. What does it mean to be called by your faith?
Yeah, that word calling gets used a lot, sometimes with a lot of weight and responsibility attached to it.
I used to think you could only use it for a certain kind of person, the really spiritual ones who seem to have it all figured out.
The spiritual superheroes.
Because for some people, calling sounds like a lightning bolt moment, a clear direction, a sense that God has one specific thing for your life and you'd better not miss it.
And for others, it's a source of anxiety. Am I doing the right thing? Shouldn't this feel clearer by now? So today we'll try to unpack it a little, to talk about what calling actually looks like in real life, or can look like. And just as importantly, what it doesn't have to look like.
Well, to me, it doesn't have to start with a lightning bolt or fireworks.
Right. When you actually look at the Bible, calling almost never starts with clarity or certainty. One of the clearest examples of this for me is the story of Samuel in the temple. He hears his name being called, but he doesn't recognize God's voice. He just assumes it's Eli, his mentor.
Just an ordinary and familiar person. He's not ignoring God, he just doesn't know what he's hearing yet.
He literally needs help. Someone to say, next time you hear that voice, it might be God. Try listening this way. Listening comes before understanding.
And the part of Samuel's story that often gets missed is what he's actually called to do.
Yeah, his first calling moment isn't glamorous at all.
Hardly. God gives Samuel a message for Eli, and it's not a positive one. It's about judgment, about things going wrong under Eli's leadership, which is pretty heavy considering Eli is the one who's been guiding Samuel all this time.
Samuel's first act of calling is to tell the truth to someone he respects, knowing it's going to hurt the both of them. And how does he react, Maya?
Well, he's scared. He actually tries to avoid the conversation and wait until morning. He hopes he doesn't have to say anything to rock the boat, which feels so honest.
It does. And when Eli finally asks him directly, he tells him everything, even though it costs him emotionally. So calling, in Samuel's case, isn't about clarity or confidence. It's about faithfulness in an awkward moment he didn't choose.
Before Samuel becomes a leader, a prophet, and a voice for a nation, he's asked to be honest on one hard conversation. And that reframes the idea of being called quite a lot for me. It suggests that more often than not, calling doesn't start with a big vision of the future, but with a small and maybe difficult act of obedience right in front of you.
Another calling story that just feels so deeply human is the story of Moses.
The burning bush, classic. And this actually is a bona fide lightning bolt moment.
Right, but we often forget Moses' reaction. When God calls him, he immediately pushes back. He doesn't go, "Here I am, send me."
He starts making a list. He lists all the reasons why he's the wrong person for the job.
He talks about his weaknesses, his fears, his lack of confidence, even his public speaking issues.
It's so important that we remember that. Moses doesn't say no because he doesn't care. He says no because he feels completely unqualified.
And what is more familiar than that? That's such a familiar human feeling.
Absolutely. So many of us assume a calling requires confidence, that you have to feel ready. But Moses just shows that reluctance and calling can absolutely exist together.
And God's response is key. He doesn't dismiss Moses because of his doubts. He works with them. He walks through the objections with him, which again reframes the notion of being called to something that grows alongside you, not something you have to be perfectly ready for from day one.
You don't have to show up fully formed. Spiritual superheroes are not required.
So, yes, calling isn't just about being ready, it's also about where you're found, which brings me to the story of David in the first book of Samuel. When the prophet is sent to anoint Israel's next king, he goes to Jesse's house and sees all these older, stronger sons, the ones who look like obvious leaders. And Samuel assumes one of them must be the one God has chosen.
But God tells him not to judge by appearance, not to confuse impressiveness with calling.
And that's when they realize David isn't even in the room. He's out in the fields, doing his job, looking after his sheep. He isn't trying to find his calling. He's being faithful in what's already in front of him.
So calling meets him not in a temple or in a dramatic moment of clarity, but in the middle of an ordinary day. This makes it less about discovering some hidden destiny and more about, as you said earlier, Josh, responding where you already are.
Which speaks directly to a quiet fear a lot of people carry. What if I've missed my calling or taken a wrong turn somewhere? But David's story suggests calling isn't that fragile. It doesn't disappear because you missed it or weren't even looking for it. You just have to make yourself available to it, I suppose, is a way of looking at it.
Being open and willing, yeah. It's also worth noting that calling unfolds over time, right? David doesn't become king overnight. Samuel grows into his role. Moses learns as he goes.
The disciples misunderstand things constantly, so calling doesn't remove confusion, but it gives it a direction.
So bringing all this into modern life now, for us, for our listeners, a calling to faith might not look like a big announcement. I mean, great if it actually is. Everyone's different, everyone matters. But for some, it might look like something that comes from paying a little more attention to the world around you.
Just doing the right thing, how you treat people, use your time. And when you think about it that way, it takes the pressure off. Instead of searching for your own perfect purpose, calling can simply be a way of being in the world. You definitely don't need to be or feel extraordinary in any way.
It's less about the destination, more about the direction of your walk.
But if you feel unsure about that direction, just remember you're human. Small steps, one foot in front of the other. Your faith isn't asking you to have your whole life mapped out, and it never will.
Hey, before we wrap up, can I say something a bit more personal?
Yeah, please.
I've been thinking about this idea of calling while we've been talking, and I don't know about you, but I don't think I ever had a moment where I was suddenly called to faith or decided to focus on it.
No lightning bolt for you, huh?
It was much, much quieter than that. It was more like noticing I kept being drawn back to it, even when I drifted, when I wasn't sure what I believed. What about you?
I can relate to that a lot. There were long stretches where my faith felt more like a question than any answer. But I realized I kept asking questions toward God, not away from Him.
That's the same for me. It started with conversations, sitting with people, talking honestly about doubt and belief without needing one to fix the other. And I mean with all kinds of people. Different ages and backgrounds, even religions.
Which is basically, well, this thing we're doing here.
Yes, this podcast didn't start because I felt called to start a podcast. It started because these were conversations I wanted to have, needed to have, really.
Yeah, and I didn't wake up one morning wanting to teach people about my faith or anything. I just know that when I talk about these things, topics, themes, scripture, real life, I feel grounded and lighter, like it just matters. And over time, over the course of our conversations, that pull has become clearer. Not louder, just clearer.
So when we talk about calling not being fragile or dramatic, it's not theoretical for us. This came out of ordinary life, ordinary questions, and lots of uncertainty.
But with a quiet sense of purpose, that this was worth continuing.
It's worth saying this is actually our penultimate episode of Season 1, which is kind of wild.
And after next week, we're going to take a short break, catch our breath, reflect on everything we've talked about.
Find a sponsor for Season 2, maybe?
Yeah, maybe that, and start shaping what comes next.
But we've still got one more conversation to go, and we're really looking forward to it.
So thank you for listening, thinking, questioning, and walking alongside us this season.
We genuinely couldn't do this without you. Until next time, take care of yourselves.
And we'll see you on the next episode of Between the Verses.